I invite you to pray with me. Eternal God, in the stillness of this night, may your Spirit rest upon us, that as a young woman conceives, so we too might conceive of a new world, a different way of life, and the hope that is promised by your Son. We ask this in his name, as we pray that the words of my mouth and the meditations of our common hearts might be acceptable in your sight. Amen. A few years ago, a woman named Kathleen Norris wrote a book called Dakota. It was a bestseller, and it was the story of her move. A younger woman, she moved to New York City, where she worked as a famous journalist, and eventually ended up going back to her hometown area in South Dakota to care for her aging parents. And as she tells her story, it is about the people there and the life there and the charm there and the geography of that place that made her feel very different than the noise and the clutter and the rushing around of the city life that had been her existence for so many years. And in that book, she coins a particular theological phrase that resonated with me at the time and continues to resonate with me even to this day. She said there is such a thing as spiritual geography. Spiritual geography. It is the belief, spiritual geography is the belief that there are places in the world, there are spots out there from which, because of the people, the convergence of lifestyles, the very nature of our surroundings, that they exude an energy and a power that strengthens us. Probably the most common thing that everyone is aware of is, Stonehenge, where people go and the stones are gathered and so forth. But I remember a few years ago visiting with a ranger in the Rocky Mountains, and he said one of the tasks that was most burdensome and the biggest nuisance was every morning in the mountains, the rangers had to go back and put all the stones back in their natural spot because the New Agers had put them in circles to mark those portals to a different realm or whatever it was that they believed came from that place. Outlander stuff, if you watch that. We smile and we chuckle, but I think there is something to this because I suspect that intuitively we all have this. Everybody here has that favorite chair. Am I not right? And if somebody's sitting in that chair, you kind of stand there and go, like, you're thinking, what business do you have in my spot? The place where you read, or you get up in the morning and you have a cup of coffee and you go through whatever you go through. We all have those places in our homes. Likewise, I suspect that many of us have places in the world that are exactly the same way. People talk about the beach or spots on the beach or different places that they have traveled to. They've traveled to, and they not only feel comfortable in those places and in those spaces, but they feel different. They feel at home. They feel that this is a special kind of place. And that's what Norris is talking about. She said that there's an awareness that we need to have of this geography in our lives that somehow it puts us in tune with the divine. We not only feel different, we become different in these places because we lower our defense mechanisms and we open our souls. We become vulnerable in a way that we aren't in other times and other places. these moments, these times, these spots, she says we should recognize as holy. It's almost that sense and that feeling, this is where I belong. It was St. Augustine who once said, "Our souls are restless till they find their rest in thee." And I suspect that when you are in those kind of places, on that spot, and you feel that release and everything else that has pressured you and pushed you and called you is set aside, that you know exactly what St. Augustine was talking about. When I did my doctoral studies, one of the aspects of my studies was to look at the transition and the growth and the stages of institutions and organizations, because they're all the same, and we've all participated in a small or large scale. You know, people get together, they have a great idea, it all starts up, and they say, man, we should take this to market. And they begin to market, and when you market, you begin to structure. When you begin to structure, you get a bigger administration, and then all of a sudden, people begin to struggle about power and about ideas, and there's a disintegration that takes place. And the worst thing is a loss of the original impetus for the operation to begin with. All you got to do is look at the corporate world and your favorite chain store, if you've ever known one. When we were in Boston, it was Steve's Ice Cream. People would wait around the block for miles to go to Steve's Ice Cream outside Harvard University. And then they franchised it. And then you could get it in the grocery store. And it wasn't the same. And when corporations get to that point, they say, well, something's wrong. We've missed something. We've lost it. We've got to go back to the beginning. We have cluttered things up. We have, in our attempt to make things better, humanly better, we have detracted from what originally made them great. It happens all the time. Whenever I go to Israel, people expect that the big tourist spots are, and that's what they become, is tourist spots are going to be the places they're going to have this wonderful spiritual experience. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, or the church at Gethsemane, or some of those places. But it's usually not those places that speak to them. Why? Because the spot where they say this happened, they have built and they destroyed, and they built and they destroyed, and they built and they destroyed till they get what is now there on top of what originally was there. And where people feel closest to the divine is usually on a simple pavement where they know Jesus walked. Do you follow what I'm saying? We take these special things in life and somehow we think we can make them better. We can recreate them. We can design them. And what we do is layer upon layer upon layer until we lose what was originally the power and the energy of the experience itself. We think we're adding beauty, but not so much. You know, Guillermo and I were reviewing this week. We were reviewing the service, and I was always a little afraid the match was going to be a problem. And we talked about that, and we talked about all of it, and then there was this point when we looked at each other, because there's so much stuff that goes into a service like this, and we looked at each other and we said, you know, if it all went wrong, Christmas would still come. Christmas would still come, would it not? Christmas would come. Because these things that we heap on top and think are so necessary, those are our things, not God's things. We think we're adding beauty, but we're really just adding stress. How many people will be glad when Christmas is over? Right? I hear that. Because of all that we've made of it. More is not always better. Which may be why at the center of the Christmas story is not an ornate golden palace. We don't find that. we find a rickety manger. We do not find a powerful monarchy. We find a vulnerable baby. And as I thought about that, why? It seems to me that babies take us back to the beginning. Babies take us back to the beginning. There is a renewal, there is a hope, and somehow we experience through them vicariously that freshness of existence that we have lost in our journey. Some of you are laughing, but is there anything better than a child's laughter? Is there anything better than a child's laughter? I could do that all night. Somebody gave this to me. They said, when you get stressed out, just push the button. Why does it do that? Because it is so genuine. Because it is so deep and so heartfelt, and somehow it brings out from us that place in our nature where God always intended us to be and to live. You know, adults make complete fools of themselves when they're in the presence of a child. Don't they? Complete fools of themselves. They say all kinds of things. They make all kinds of faces. They do things they would never do anywhere else, and they don't care who sees. I saw some pictures a while back that had been posted about, they were pictures of President Obama in the Oval Office with children. And it just was amazing to me to see a photograph of the most powerful man in the world on the ground with his face looking at the face of a crawling child. You know, there's something about the baby that opens us up. It makes us feel like it's okay to be vulnerable. And we let go of all that other stuff, that transcendent stuff that gets in our way, clutters our life, causes us stress and anxiety that we so think we need, but really don't. There is a story that's told about a Christmas and a little girl, who had been clearly instructed not to go in a particular bedroom where her mother was wrapping Christmas presents. You know, the mother had wrapping paper and bows and things, and they all were for specific people. You know, don't mess with that room. Stay out of there. Well, that's like the last thing you want to say to a child, because that's just like an invitation to go in to begin with. And while they were gone, while they weren't looking, the little girl went into that room, and she took a box with her, and she not only got some wrapping paper, she got the brightest, goldest, most beautiful paper that the mother had, and she wrapped, I was going to say like a child, but she probably wrapped the present like I do, and put it under the tree. Well, on Christmas Day, when the mother saw it, the mother was upset and said, "Why didn't you listen to me? Why did you do that?" And when she opened it up, there wasn't even anything in it. She said, "There's not anything in it." The little girl, who had once been cheery and presented the gift to her mother, had tears in her eyes, and she said, "It's not empty. I blew kisses in it till it was full." Do you see what I'm talking about? We get caught up in the wrapping papers. We get caught up in all the other stuff. We always want a big show out of everything, but it's not about that. That's about us. It's not about that. It's about the things that we can't see but are so powerful. The kisses in the box. This summer, I stayed at a Scottish monastery in the island of Iona, where when you live in the monastery, there are a lot of things that you just can't have. It's just not a part of life there. And what I discovered is not just that I can live without them, but I can live better without them. My soul was better without them. which is maybe why for centuries, since the 7th century, people have been going to this island on pilgrimages, trying to find that spiritual geography, that place where they can let go of the external, move to the internal, and somehow reconnect with the divine. This is so significant that everyone in Scotland who knows about islands says that's the place where the air is thin. The air is thin on Iona. And what that means is they believe that that is the closest place on earth between here and heaven. That the air is thin there. The spiritual geography is great. I believe that on this night, the air is thin. The air is thin in many places. The air is even thin in this place. I believe that wherever the babe of Bethlehem is sincerely sought, the presence of God acknowledged, the beauty of our humanity truly recognized, and the wonder and the goodness of life and creation is celebrated, in those places there is a possibility that we might pierce the air from earth and touch the skies of heaven. Not because the candles are right, the songs are right, the solos are right, not because of any of that, but because we are right. We are right. We have that openness that we don't have at other times. We have a vulnerability that seeks the divine and sets aside all those other things. And when that occurs, whoever you are or wherever you are on life's journey, I tell you, the ground on which you stand will become holy. We will see life and our priorities differently. Our purpose and our existence will be changed. Our hearts will be filled with a new sense of being. All the distractions set aside. And it is then that you know you are in that special place, because in your deepest, richest parts of your soul, you will hear angels sing. Amen. At this time, we will receive our Christmas offering, and year to year, we usually use this offering for ministries, broad ministries of the church outside our own congregation. This year, I have had so many people talk to me about our steeple that I think that is where we will designate it. People have come and said they missed it when they are walking on the beach. They've missed it when they've come to visit Pass-A-Grille. They have missed it when they've been sailing boats at night. And that's what we use it for. The information is listed regarding this in your center insert, so I invite you to take a look at it. And even though I am really not all that comfortable saying it, it's important to think about the new tax changes. They will be different next year. So if you're thinking about making a donation to help us in this regard, take that into consideration if you're one of those fortunate individuals over the past quarter of the fiscal year. We will now receive our offering. Please be seated. And as we proceed to the lighting of the candles and the extinguishing of the Advent candles, a gentle reminder to tip the unlit candle as the light goes down from person to person. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him. Without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. And to this day, the light shines in the darkness, for the darkness has yet to overcome it.
Brightly shining, it is the night of the dear Savior's birth. Long lay its worth, a thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine, oh, night, oh, night Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymn